Hello and welcome to the Parsha class. Parsha Devarim 5783. And just want to point out a few things. First of all, we are now beginning the last Sefer of the Torah, bringing us ever closer to the new year, and only good news, God willing. Also, this is the Shabbat of Chazon, and it's worth mentioning that especially schedule-wise, it's an important difference in that next week, instead of the usual Thursday morning Parsha class, it'll be Wednesday morning before Tisha B'Av. Whether we're celebrating Tisha B'Av as a holiday or not, either way, we will have the Parsha class before that of Parshat Elchanan, which will now bring it into the third year of me giving a recorded Parsha class on every Parsha, with some exceptions, but starting with Elchanan when I began my Rabbanut here. Let's get right into the Parsha. Let's see a quick summary. The entire Sefer of Devarim is a long speech, basically a 6-week long speech that Moshe gives to the Jewish people in preparation for their entering Eretz Yisrael without him, as he points out several times. It's a rebuke. It's also a reminder of several mitzvot, and many mitzvot, in fact, if not the entire Torah. And of course, it could be read on a deeper level with references to the future and different events in Jewish history, all alluded to in the Parsha. The primary focus, especially this Parsha, is the fact that in the last 40 years that Moshe had been leading the people, he'd brought them to this point where they are now at the corner. They're now at the very edge. They're at the border of entering Eretz Yisrael. They're almost there. And the reason that it took so long is because there was punishment, as punishment for the Jewish people believing in the spies. And that is the first Tisha B'Av, obviously relevant point nowadays. There's a short history lesson in the 5th Aliyah about the people of Ammon and Moab and all the people who lived in those lands, the destruction of Sichon and Og, and the receiving of property by Reuven, Gad, and half the tribe of Menashe. And of course, the Parsha ends with Moshe giving encouragement to the next leader, Yoshua, before he takes over his leadership. And that leads us right into Vayetchanan, which has a lot of deep and important philosophical concepts, which we'll get to, God willing, next week, Wednesday, as we said before. I seem to have had technical issues today with Sefaria. Was not able to create a source sheet yet. Hopefully, I will in the near future, and I'll post that together with in the description of the video on YouTube. But meanwhile, we can indeed learn some of the Parsha through the sources. I did scan the sources, at least some of them, as I was going to share those. So let's see if I can share the screen. And it's, that seemed to work. All right. Let's, very good. All right, Baruch H-Shem. Okay, let me, that, followed by that. Okay, Baruch H-Shem. Okay. We've got a few pieces here today. But some of them are fundamental, and I think some unique insights that you might have not learned in the past. We'll start with the very first pasuk. Reads, right? El hadvarim asher diber Moshe al kol Yisrael, Me'ever HaYarden, B'midbar, Ba'arava. So these are the words that Moshe spoke, and we focused in past years on the fact that Elu Devarim is a unique opening, and that it implies the uniqueness of Moshe's prophecy, and that this book, more than the other books, has something of Moshe's personality in the language and in the prophecy. All right, El Kol Yisrael, he's speaking to all the Jewish people. This is the long speech to the entire Jewish people. Be'ever HaYarden, at the side of the Yarden, B'midbar, in the Midbar, Ba'arava, in the Arava, Mol Suf, opposite the Yam Suf, against the Reed Sea, Bein Paran, Bein Tofel, between Paran and Tofel, Lavan v'chatzerot, and white, or Lavan and chatzerot, v'di zahav, and whatever di zahav means, something gold, right? Of gold, and obviously these places are not obviously, but we've spoken in the past about how these place names are not really places. There's no map that'll show you where these places are. These are all allusions to events that happened in the past 40 years. These have probably the easiest one. It has to do with gold. What could have possibly happened with gold in the last 40 years? The golden calf, perhaps. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that Moshe was doing, speaking gently to the Jewish people to give them rebuke, and at the same time not to make it seem impossible for them to continue despite the challenges and mistakes they've had in the past. With that said, the Or HaChaim has another way to look at these place names, and he says that they're not just lessons for the people then and the sins that they accomplished or that they had gone through then. They're also a reference to us. That's right. We also learn things from these words of the Torah. That's why it's in the Torah, to teach us lessons, not just for a frozen peak time in history when the generation of the Midbar were alive, but for us now. There's relevance and important lessons to be learned. Let's look at some of these lessons. He counts no less than 9, count them 9, perhaps even 10 lessons that can be learned from these place names for our behavior. So, for example, we're going to do more than example. We're going to hopefully get into all of it. So he said, Ever HaYarden. So Ever, he says, is a reference to Ivri, the original Ivri, the first Jew, the one who was against everybody else. Ever also means like over. He was over the river. Everybody thought one thing. And everybody else thought something else. And he stood up against them. So we have to take, he says, we have to take the same kind of characteristic. We also have to be like him. We have to be other. We have to be ready to be against the flow. Everybody believes one thing. Everybody has one political opinion. Everybody else, makes it illegal to travel, state-sponsored travel from one state to another if they disagree about a particular social issue. We have to have our own Torah-based approach to all things. And that's the way it goes. One second. One moment, please. It seems like some people are not in Zoom, not able to get in. Interesting. All right, but we'll just have to continue. I don't know quite how to pause everything here. Anyway, Baruch Hashem. So that's number one lesson. Be ready to stand up against the tides of philosophical, political, everything else, motivations. Number two, he says, from the word Yardain, he says it's related to the word mardut, being self-critical. The Gemara says in Brachot, it said, Tova mardut achad b'libo shel adam memea malkuyot. So being critical of yourself, looking at yourself and saying, did I do this right? Am I doing that right? What if I am doing the right thing, what's my motivation for doing it? Really analyzing your actions and analyzing yourself is an important part of growing in Judaism. And that's one of the things he says that this refers to. Lesson number three, all very personal, all important lessons that can be learned just from the words of the first verse. Number three, he says, anava, humility is an important thing. What does that have to do with anything? Why does it say midbar? Midbar is a humble place. It's a place with nothing there, right? As it says in the Gemara, Eruvin 54a, Le'olam yasim adam atzmo kamidbar. Person should always make himself into a midbar, into a desert, into a wilderness, in a sense. And that's why he says. That's why he says here midbar. Okay. Next, why does he say the word? So we just said you have to be humble, but at the same time, he says, anava doesn't mean that you have to in any way take away from your na'ot, so your pleasantness, how kind you are, how gentle you are, even though you might be beating yourself up for, oh, I didn't do that right, I didn't do that right. So that's not supposed to, at the same time, while you're being self-critical and while you're being humble, that doesn't mean you're supposed to make yourself into a shmata, into a piece of garbage. You're supposed to dress nicely. You're supposed to behave nicely. You're supposed to bring, here's a word that's not often used today in society: dignity. You're supposed to carry yourself with dignity. That's part of the essence of tzniut. It's not just hiding things or covering up things. The real essence of tzniut is dignity, as the recent book on the subject, Reclaiming Dignity, makes amply clear. The next topic he brings up is, why does it mention that they are on the border, right? So he says, this is kind of a little bit of a stretch. He brings up the first mission in the third chapter of Pirkei Avot. You have to mistaka b'shlosha devarim, think about three things, and it's going to keep you away from chet, going to keep you away from sin. And those three things are where have you come from, where are you going, and who's going to give you judgment at the end of days. Especially that last part. Now, where are you going? You're going to eventually, after 120 years, you're not going to be alive forever. So keep that in mind. That's an important aspect. So that being the case, so that's like the border between life and death is what is being referred to there. You're supposed to always stand on the border that way. Lesson number 6, he says, and this is also an important thing. He brings this from the Chovat HaLevavot. He says there that haparush tzalato b'panav v'da'agato b'libo. That should be like a bumper sticker. In other words, have your joy, have your happiness on your face, and your worries in your heart. You don't have to vent to everybody all of your problems. People shouldn't be able to see just by looking at you that you're troubled. That was essentially how Yosef knew that the butler and the baker had dreams that needed interpreting, was that they looked down and they looked sad, they looked confused. So, in other words, even that kind of self-control of not letting everybody know exactly how you're feeling all the time is also an important thing. Doesn't mean you have to lie. Doesn't mean you have to hide your feelings if you have feelings. You should have somebody that you can talk to, of course. But that doesn't mean the whole world, and not the entire internet needs to know exactly how you feel every moment. So that's another important thing. And the next thing is, and how is that? Sorry, how is that referred to in the verse? So what it says, Paran and Tofel, right? Paran, which could mean Paran, which is like pe'er, it's like beauty, in other words, what your face looks like. And Tofel is, he says, is a reference to it's like tefela, so it's something that's something without any taste. So that's like the bitterness and the feelings in your heart that you don't need to express to everybody. So show the pe'er, but at the same time, don't let everybody see your tofel. Okay, so that's one thing. The next lesson, number 7 here, is that he says, lo leiv tahor v'naki. Everybody should have a pure and clean heart. How is that referenced in the verse? Good question, because he says lavan, right? He says, what does lavan indicate? It means white. So it means that's how clean your heart should be. You shouldn't have negative thoughts. There is, by the way, an interesting halachic point. You are not punished per se for having thoughts of wickedness or plans to rob, etc., unless you act them out, and then obviously then you're punished for the act and for the thought. But ordinarily, aside for avodah zarah, idol worship, thoughts, or the converse of avodah zarah is having negative thoughts about Hashem. So that those, you could say, perhaps second. So those perhaps have sorry, give me one moment. Oh, good. H-Shem. All right. So the so your heart needs to be white and clean. Can't have negative thoughts. Can't have not just negative thoughts, but plans to do bad things or anything like that. That's the kind of behavior you shouldn't have. And lesson number 8 is that it's important to have a kavut of learning Torah. You should have a special time each day when you learn Torah. What happens is people don't do that. They say, "Oh, I'll learn sometime. Yeah, I'll fit in 5 minutes." What ends up happening, unless you have a interesting. Give me one moment. I'm sorry. I'm going to stop the share for a moment. Anyway, that's not what you need to share. Give me one quick moment. See if I can fix this. Oh, that's weird. I see. Okay. I see what happened. I see what's happening here. All right. Oh, wow. Okay. Technology. It's a blessing and a curse. Whew. All right. So back to our 9 or 10 lessons from the Orach Chaim on the first few verses of the first verse of the parsha and its places. And so again, you need to have a fixed time for Torah, Next point, the last point, really 9 or 10 or both. It says that you should. We didn't talk about how there's that idea is alluded to in the verse, and the way that it's alluded to in the verse is the word chatzerot, which means courtyards, and that's a reference to the courtyards of Torah study that are mentioned many times, as it says in Tehillim 84:11 and in other such places. Welcome. Glad that worked. And other places it says that it's important to have a chatzerot of Torah, a place to learn Torah, a time to learn Torah. It's a set time for that sort of thing. So that's lesson number 9. And the last, lesson number 8, lesson number 9, or 8, 9, and 10. The last lesson of these place names and all the ethical lessons that we can learn from them is that the di zahav. So from di zahav, from the fact that it says di, or you can read it as day, like enough, like die, right? And zahav is gold, like it's enough gold. So that can mean one of two things. Number one, it can mean not to be pulled after imaginary thing, like somebody just in LA, somebody just won $1 billion, right? So like, do you really need $1 billion? Like, I can think of things to do with $1 billion. Don't get me wrong. You want to send $1 billion to shul? No problem. That's not the point. But what is the point is, like, they try to enhance you. They try to convince you to buy these lottery tickets with these unrealistic, crazy numbers, like the kinds of things you can't possibly need. The other lottery is $700 million. $700 million. Literally $1 million should be enough for most normal things. And okay, you can't buy a house in this neighborhood for that, but it's a good start. It's a pretty good down payment. But $700 million, like, how many houses you want to buy? 700 of them? Like, seriously. There's a point where it's just too much. So that's what Dei Zahav means. And another, he says, or Yirtza, if you want, here's an alternative explanation of what it means. It means that just to be happy with what you have. It's very related, obviously, and that is, you don't need the gold at all. You need to be happy with what you have, and that's going to make you a happier person. All right, now I can share the screen again. Baruch H-Shem. We're going to look at a small piece from Rav Hirsch on a verse in this week's parsha, but in his commentary, not on this week's parsha. I'll explain in a moment. So the pasuk says that Moshe creates a court system. He had to find judges, and one of the instructions he gave them is lo takiru panim b'mishpat. Basically it means do not recognize a face in judgment. Kikaton, kagadol, big or small, tishmaun v'lo taguru mipnei ish. Don't be afraid of any person. Ki hamishpat le'elokim hu. Judgment is Hashem's. You don't have to worry that somebody you made a decision and somebody's going to hurt you for that. You don't have to worry about that. Hashem is taking care of it. He'll make sure either that you don't get hurt, or if you do get hurt, it's for something that you deserve from Hashem. Either way, there's no subterfuge. There's no getting around Hashem's law. Probably using the wrong word there. Anyway, v'hadavar asher yiksha mikem takrivun elai v'shamati. And anything that's difficult for you, ask me, and I will hear it. So Rav Hirsch, back in Vayikra 1915, that's not the year, that's the verse, chapter 19, verse 15. So over there, it's also talking about judges and not showing favoritism. You have to understand, and this is hard for us to picture nowadays because it's so obvious. The world before the Torah did not have equality before the law. If you were in Hammurabi's court, maybe a bad example, let's say Hammurabi's court, you were in the court of Alexander the Great, and you had a court case, right? And you were a cousin or friend of Alexander the Great, and he saw you in court and he was the judge for that case, you would have won. Doesn't matter what happened. You could have stolen something, you could be in the wrong, somebody deserves to take something from you, whatever it is, you would win the case. That's not true for Torah law. Torah law is the first time in history when people who were otherwise on a lower end of the scale, socially, financially, or in any other way, they were equals in court. Kikatan kigado. Doesn't matter whether you're small or big, everybody's equal before the law. And that fundamental idea about Jewish law is in existence today all over the world because it was in the Torah. The fundamental idea behind all liberal thought, which is what that is, all the equality and all the fairness and anti-racism and all of that finds its source in Torah. Without Torah, there is none of that. We're all our own group. Somebody else comes in. We are the superiors. We are the majority. Some purple person decides to steal something from somebody who's green, and they live in a country of people who are all green. That purple person will lose the case, no matter what, right or wrong. So writes Rav Hirsch, the warning to the community, lo tasu o b'mishpat, leads to a warning to each individual judge, lo tisadab pnei davalo te'adar mipnei gadol, rather b'tzedek tishpat amitecha. Don't care when you're a judge whether the person talking to you is poor or rich. Your job is to be fair in justice in your nation. These three statements caused caution against partiality toward one of the litigants. In Devarim 117, that's our verse. This is put in general terms, lo takiru pani b'mishpat. Literally, you must not recognize faces during judgment. Now, here's what I wanted to focus on. That is to say, in forming your judgment and in giving your verdict, pay no attention to the personalities of the litigants. Consider only the issue in dispute. What the personalities are, what they are, who they are, doesn't matter. An axiom of Jewish law is that a judge who does not know the litigants will reach a fair decision. And if he knows them, he is to forget who they are. Forget them. They don't exist as the people you knew. A litigant's previous record of uprightness or wickedness must not affect his standing in the minds of the judges. Such a reputation must not influence the decision. The most righteous person may be in the wrong in this case. The most wicked person may be in the right. Sometimes evil people are right. Sometimes good people are wrong. They made a mistake. They forgot something. Who bought those plates? I don't know. Did I buy them? Did she buy them? It doesn't matter. Sometimes you forget. It happened a long time ago. That's when you have to be fair. And the character doesn't matter, and nothing else matters. And that's why this pasuk uses that phrase, lo takiru panim. Do not recognize their faces. Like you don't know who they are. Okay. Go from there. That was chapter 1, verse 17. We go to chapter 1, verse 28. We're still in chapter 1. This is pretty typical of Parshat Devarim class. You stay with there's a lot of verses in the first chapter, and there's a lot to say, of course. Okay. Worth talking about because, as I said before, this is the beginnings of Tisha B'Av, is when the Jewish people believed the report of the spies. This is a quote or paraphrase of part of their report. They said, "Ana anachnu olim achenu How are we going to be able to get up? Achenu, hemasu et livavenu. Our brothers, in other words, the spies, they melted our hearts. Yeah? Lamor, by saying, what do they say? Am gadol v'ram imenu, they're a very big and mighty nation, more mighty than us. Arim gadolot, they're very big cities. Ubetsurot bashamayim begam b'nei anakim ra'inu sham, and their walls are to the heavens, and even the anakim live there, are visible there. So, regarding the phrase that these really tall walls, right, go to the heavens, right? Oh heavens! So says Rashi, Diber hakatuv lashon havai. The Torah is speaking in a language of hyperbole, exaggeration. The Torah is exaggerating. The Torah, the Holy Torah, written by Moshe Rabbeinu, prophecy from H-Shem, is using exaggeration. Now, those of us who are familiar with literature, we know that exaggeration is something that authors use to make a point, signify something, and it's an important thing. Makes sense. It kind of gives you a mental picture, etc. So that perhaps that's what the Torah is doing. But one person who had a problem with this is our next Yeke. We just had Rav Hirsch. Now we're going to get to Rav Shimon Schwab, who writes in Mayan Beit HaShoeva, Barashi Arim Gedolot V'tzurot HaShamayim. He says that it's a Lashon Havai, and he says who B'chulin, says in the Gemara in Chulin, page 90b. Ayin Sham, look over there. Barashi, Rashi's commentary. She Mefarish Lashon Havai. He explains what Lashon Havai means, what hyperbole, what exaggeration means. It says Lashon Hedyot, she'ena medakdek. It's just a simple word, and it's not very careful. It's not very obviously. It's not very detailed. It's not specific. B'dvarav mutzi b'fiv daber she'eno. And you're basically saying with your mouth something that is not true. If the room is full when you walk in and you say, wow, I came in and there were 1 million people there, that's exaggeration. That's hyperbole. If there were really 1 million people, you counted them. Okay, great. Otherwise, you're just exaggerating. And it doesn't feel right for the Torah to exaggerate. It kind of feels like it's lying. The Torah gives a number. The Torah describes a thing. It seems like it should mean more than that. And he says, "Adayin ein hadavar muven kol kach lama tishtamesh haTorah b'lashon kazeh im ein bo emet klal." There's no emet there. It's not true. You're saying those walls reach to the heavens. We're not really mean. It doesn't really mean the heavens. It means close enough. It's 20-foot walls, 30 feet walls. That doesn't sound right. V'itakin, so he's going to give his own kavana for this. She'al kol panim yesh b'zeh remez l'davar emet. Maybe, says Rav Schwab, maybe there's a hint here, a remez, we could read this a different way, that maybe there's a hint here to something that is very true. Sharei b'sof sefer Yeshua mefura shayu arim be'eretz Yisrael shelo nichbeshu b'mei Yeshua. Turns out from the end of Sefer Yeshua, we learned that there were cities that were not conquered in the times of Yeshua. And in the book of Shoftim, the book of Judges, we learned that there were certain cities that weren't conquered yet. We know that the Canaanim still lived in the land. They were giving problems to the Jewish people throughout their living there. It's no coincidence that same influence that Hashem warned us about in the Torah, that if we don't destroy the Canaanim, we're going to eventually do like them, behave like them. It's no coincidence that we were behaving like them, that we had Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayot, Shvicha Damim, those three things that caused the destruction of the first temple and brought us to this point here in the year of the days before Tisha B'Av. Anyway, So there were still cities even at the end of Shoftim, that weren't conquered. Afilu b'yimei Shlomo, even at that time of Shlomo, Adayin lo nichbisha ir Gazer ad shekavsha melech Mitzrayim and natna l'Shlomo. It was only when the king of Egypt gave it as a gift to Shlomo that is a certain place called Gazer. Gezer was conquered, as is clear by Sefer Malachim in the Book of Kings. The Kinira Kamosh Amar Avram She'enu Yachol Lirush Miyad at Eretz Yisrael, and this was hinted to Avraham all the way back in the Brit Ben Abitarim, when Avraham was told that the Eretz Yisrael would not be conquered all at once. Kilo Shalem Avam Hamori Adhan, until the sin of the Amorite till now, only then would the land be conquered. Kain Hayab Anshe Ha'arim Ha'ela. So you can say about the people of these cities, Shalosh Shalem Avonam Ad Az, that they were not really done there until now. So Vizehu Nirmaz b'masha katuv hayu b'tzura b'shamayim. And that is what's being hinted at by saying that the walls of these cities are up to heaven. Perush, he explains, Shayalahem shmira mina shamayim. They have protection from heaven, literally. Ma'achar shelo higia zman avodam adayin. It's not time yet to conquer them. It's not time yet. And until it's time to conquer them, Hashem won't let us conquer them. There's an important thing to think about when you're thinking about human history, especially Jewish history, as many people are thinking about in these days. And that is that regardless of our actions, not regardless of, that's the wrong word. Sometimes despite our actions, Hashem hasn't deemed certain things to be ready to happen yet. It's not time yet. Hashem will tell us when the time is. Our job is to do what we're supposed to do, conquer whatever cities we need to conquer, and if certain things don't work out, it's not always our fault entirely. It could be part of Hashem's plan. Okay. Next comment, chapter 2, verse 7. Let's get to the next chapter. We'll get to this piece hopefully in a few moments. Chapter 2, verse 7 says, Moshe is reminding the Jewish people how good they had it while they were in the Midbar. They're still in the Midbar, so they kind of understand what he's saying, right? And shortly afterwards, they're going to be going into Eretz Yisrael, where they will not have the same exact ease in living their lives. They'll have to set up homes, cities, governments, plant, reap, all that stuff. They don't have to worry about any of that right now. Life is good. They're on vacation, right? They're being provided. The man, etc., the clouds. Ki Hashem Elokecha birachacha b'kol ma'aseh yadecha. Hashem blessed you with all of your things, things you're doing. Yada lechtecha. He knew which way you were going. At Hamidbar Hagadol Hazeh, in this big wilderness. Arbaim Shana Hashem Elokecha imach. For 40 years Hashem has been with you. Lo chasarta davar, and you've not been missing anything. In the proper English, you want for nothing. There's nothing that you need. Hashem's taken care of all of your needs. That being the case, we have to ask the question, as the Sforno does, what does it mean Hashem knew your ways? I have a secret for you. Hashem knows everything. So what does it mean he knew your ways? He knows your ways now. He knows what you're thinking right now. So what does it mean that he knew your ways? So he says, very important, it means Hashem gave you everything you needed. What does that have to do with knowing? So it says the word yada, the word he knows, is similar to v'yeda Elokim, right? When Hashem knew what was going on with the world, right? Hashem knew that the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and it was time for them to be taken out of Egypt. Hashem knew. Knowing, for Hashem to know something, it means Hashem is concentrating on it. Hashem is doing something to make that thing happen. In terms of Hashem knowing where the Jewish people walked in the desert, Hashem concentrated and took care of every step that the Jewish people took as they walked through the midbars, they walked through the wilderness. Every single step. And similarly, later on, it says Hashem knew. It says, and also Hashem knew. Hashem panim el panim. Hashem knew Hashem Moshe face to face, right? Ma Adam b'tede'ehu. It says in Tehillim, what is man that Hashem should recognize him, that Hashem should know him. Hashem knows him. In other words, Hashem controls him. Hashem makes sure that the environment is completely, the whole area, the whole periphery that we're walking through is all taken care of. Hashem takes care of everything. That's what it means. Hashem knew. All right. Baruch Hashem. Let's look at this famous piece. It's been quoted in many speeches, but now hopefully you'll have the opportunity to see it inside. All right. The verse, chapter 3, verse 11. Find the Chumash again. Probably shouldn't put it away. Chapter 3, verse 11. Towards the end of the Torah reading, talking about how great and powerful and scary Og was. The part of the description is Ki Rak Og Melech Bashan Nish'ar Mieter HaRafaim. Moshe Og, the king of the Bashan, was a remainder, one of the great Raphaim that we've been scaring people with for a while. Hine Arsu Eres Barzal. His bed was made of barzal, made of iron. Hello, he Rabat B'nai Ammon, and he lived in Rabbah amongst the people of Ammon. Tesha Amot Arka, and his bed, it was 9 Amot long. For Arba Amot Rachba, and 4 Amot wide. It's a big bed, right? If we're saying that an Amma is 2 feet, we're talking about 18 by 8 foot bed, right? Approximately. Except for the last 2 words, Ba'amat ish, according to the measurement of man. So there's a machloket. When we say man, we mean man, like mankind, or Ba'amat ish means according to the measurement of that particular man. It says Rashi, Ba'amot Og. That's what Rashi says. And writes, as Naim L'Torah, Zalman Sorotskin, Mipnei Shechazal Hefligu B'kumotan Shel Anakim, V'tesha Amod Regilot, L'matim Et Komto Shel Og. We're talking about the measurements of Og, the Fichak, Pirish Rashi. That's why Rashi comments as he does. Sheha'umot Amurim Kan Hein Shel Og Aval Og Einenu Va'umot Shelo Einan Yadum Lanu Ma Ba Katav Lo B'Neinu. But really the big question should be is, we don't have Og in front of us. What difference does it make whether we're talking about Og's Amot or Amot of a regular person? How big the bed is clear. It's a big bed. according to the normal, natural laws of mankind, even a regular amma, where an amma is, say, 2 feet, we're talking about an 18 by 8 foot bed. If we're talking about Og, who is taller than the average man by far, right? After Moshe, who was tall, jumped, says the Midrash, as high as he could, and threw, what he threw, he could only reach up to Og's knee. That's how big Og was. So what difference does it make how big Og was to measure this bed if we don't have Og in front of us to measure him? So he quotes from the Ibn Ezra, Pirish ba'amot kol adam, kasha, im kein lama nemar ba'amot ish, hello. If amot are always amot, what does it have to say ba'amot ish at all, according to the measurements of a person? Hello, dai haya omer tet amot. It's not enough to say 9 amot. Hello, haya shum safek b'davar v'vadai ha'umot hein regilot. It could be, so it could be Gam the Rashi kasha, Rashi's question. Lama lo namar ba'amot og. Why doesn't it say ba'amot og? Why does it say this weird phrase ba'amot ish? And he says he likes the explanation of the Rashbam. Sha'arish hi arisa shel katan. This bed is not regular bed. Arisa is not just a bed. An arisa is a crib. Hainu haktonato haya arko tet amot. And when he was small, his bed was 9 amot. When he was small, when he was a baby, his bed was 18 feet long and 8 feet wide. Ukadai shlo nita v'hadvarim amurim ba'amot shel katan. We're talking about amot of a baby Og. That's why the Torah needs to conclude with ba'amot ish, lo ba'ama shel katan. Not a regular, right? Not a regular baby size crib. In other words, as a baby, he was a big man. And that's why it says ba'amot ish, to show you that even a regular person's amot, where an amma is, say, 2 feet, even that was huge for us because that was his crib size. That's the Oznayim LaTorah explaining why it's important for us to know the size of this crib. It gives us a better idea, an estimation of how big of a person Og was himself. He was indeed a giant, physically speaking, in Pashut Pshat. And these measurements are not for no reason. Everything that's in the Torah has a reason. Every single word, every single letter has an importance and a lesson to be learned, as we learned the 10 lessons just from the geographical locations of the first verse, according to Torah Chaim. All the important lessons we can learn about how to behave, how Hashem wants us to be self-critical and humble, and at the same time dignified, and at the same time pleasant to other people. All of that is an important aspect. All of those are important aspects of how to learn Torah and how we can learn lessons from that Torah. And with that, we'll conclude the class for today. I want to wish you a good rest of your week. And a reminder that next week's class will not be on Thursday, because Thursday is Tisha B'Av, whether we are mourning it or, God willing, celebrating it. Either way, we'll have our next Parsha class next week, Wednesday at noon, God willing. Maybe even a little bit later in the day. We'll see. I'll keep you, God willing, I'll keep you all informed with an email with the correct class information there, God willing. All right, very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. If there's any questions, please, happy to answer them now.